thefam.news.
Today on the Fam Podcast, it's the remarkable journey of Beard, an Australian family-owned company celebrating 125 years of craftsmanship and innovation in sleep and wellness. We're going to explore these ambitious plans and dig into the legacy of an amazing company. Allyn Beard, fourth generation leader, is here, and the Fam Podcast starts right now. Hey, are you a mattress retailer looking to supercharge your business? Introducing Podium, your secret weapon. I use it, I'm a huge fan of it, and with Podium's AI-powered lead conversion, you can engage with customers in seconds via text, making it feel like they're talking to a friend. But hey, that's just the beginning. Podium offers texting, payments, reviews, website chat, and more, all in one place. You've got to be the most responsive retailer to help customers solve those sleep problems in the moment. Harness the power of Podium today and start growing your business. Visit podium.com right now to learn more.
Welcome to the Fam Podcast with Mark Kinsley. This is where the best in the betting business get even better.
Welcome to the Fam Podcast. Allyn, so great to have you here on the show. Our dear friend and mutual acquaintance, Amy Griffiths, of course, made the introduction. We've met each other over the years and crossed paths. It's great to be able to just sit down with you and get to know the company and you a little more as you celebrate 125 years. First of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you for the mark. It's great to be here on the Fan. Yes, it was great for Amy to make the introduction. I thought your podcast with her was really good, really exceptional. I had the great pleasure of working with Amy for quite a few years, and she continues to inspire me.
Okay, give us that, since we're talking about it. Shout out to Amy, number one. Definitely go check out that podcast if you haven't listened to it. How do you know Amy?
Amy, it was actually her parents used to be what they call proprietors for our biggest customer here in Australia called Harvey Norman. And then years later, I came across Amy. She was what they call a FIT, a franchisee in training at Mount Gravatt in Brisbane. And we were advertising for a account executive's role, and Amy applied, and I went along and met her, and she was just a standout. I actually didn't conduct any more interviews after I met with her. I said she'd be perfect. And as much as it's not frowned upon from taking staff from your biggest customer, I thought that one was worth it, and she certainly was. She was a great addition to our team.
Wow, that's amazing. And so you've been able to keep in touch over the years, and obviously you're still friends. And all of us are going to be in Vegas together, so we're going to have a chance to meet up and raise a glass and actually see each other in person. That's what I love about this industry. We have the rhythm of the road, and we know we're going to cross paths and hopefully do it soon. You've been a part of this industry, it sounds like, your entire life. I mean, you're fourth generation. For people that don't know Beard, tell them about the company and your legacy and this 125-year history.
Yeah, well, my history is obviously after high school joining the business. But the business itself, as you mentioned before, we've just celebrated 125 years in business, which in a country which is as young as Australia still, only 270 years or whatever, we're one of the 6 oldest family businesses in this country. Originally started by my brother, Gary, my 2 sisters and mine. We're each the 4th generation. Started by our great-grandfather back in the late 1890s, Enoch Beard. And the story goes that he came out from Worcestershire near Manchester in the UK. He had 13 children. It was a three-month ship, out to Australia. Imagine that. And so he noticed that when people were coming off the boats, all these new immigrants, that they're coming off with virtually a suitcase. And so he started supplying them with crockery, plates, knives and forks, and a little bit of furniture, and then beds. And so the story goes that he built the business up, and then in 1926, just before the Great Depression, the whole thing burned to the ground. The materials that they used back in those days were kapok, flock, horsehair, and straw. And those materials, especially flock and kapok, could actually self-ignite on a hot day. And then when the temperature dropped, the whole factory would burn down. So he had no insurance, but he had a little bit of savings in his bank, and he had 3 sons. And he gave each of those sons what we know today is a half gold sovereign, which is still, top of quite sought after. We use it as a hallmark to give to long-standing employees when they retire or customers, etc. So he gave this half gold sovereign to each of his three sons. Our grandfather, Albert Henry, the story goes, his brother said, "What are you going to do, Albert?" And he said, "I make beds." He said, "Beds?" He said, "You haven't been involved with beds. You don't know how to make beds. I bet you can't make 6 beds in a week." So I've actually started a bet between two brothers. So he used the half gold sovereign as collateral with the Commercial Bank of Australia at the time, now Westpac. And so then he bought the black and white stripe, remember the old black and white stripe ticking? And my grandmother sewed the covers. He hand tufted the mattresses, and they made their 6 beds in the week. And then he went on from there to, and said, in a good week these days, we can produce up to or even above 10,000 beds in a week across our 7 facilities. So after the war, Second World War, my father joined the business along with his 3 sisters, who eventually bought out of the business. And then my brother, after traveling the world, he joined the business. And then I joined the school. So, together we've been in the business for over 40 years. And we enjoy it. We started with a small factory. When Gary and I joined, it was like a 14,000 square feet factory. And believe this, back in those days, it was more OEM manufacturing, putting the retailer's own brand on the bed. And so we used to be a real high volume, low price bedding manufacturer. And to grow from where we were then to having the brands we have now and exporting beds, to China, Hong Kong, licensing our brand across the world has been a hell of a journey.
It sounds like it, and it's still going. And I noticed at one point, I think you said it feels like it's just getting started in a lot of ways. Okay, so take me from that 14,000 square foot factory when you and your brother Gary joined to now having a facility in every state in Australia and thinking bigger, going global. How did that happen? What was going through your minds? What were those conversations and those inflection points?
Yeah, well, the biggest bedding retailer here in Australia and New Zealand is called Harvey Norman. And it's a publicly listed company, but still run like a family business by Jerry Harvey and his now second wife, Katie Page. And Jerry turned up at our factory 61 years ago and met my grandmother, said, at that stage, him and 2 other partners had started what they call Harvey Norman Auction Centre. And back in those days in Australia, it was illegal to discount. So they used to run a bogus auction, like on a fridge. They'd say, do I hear 800, 600, 500 sold? And bang, and knock it down. And so he turned up at our factory and wanted to buy some beds. So my grandmother, Ada, introduced her to her son, Austin, my father. And the story goes that he bought 6 beds and then he left. And a couple of days later, he came back and my father's gone, "Well, what's the problem?" He goes, "Oh, no problem." He said, "They're great. We've already sold all those. I need to get some more." And so Harvey Norman started, as I said, back in those days, 61 years ago. They've grown into a $6 billion retailer operating across 7 countries around the world. They're in Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Malaysia, Slovenia, Ireland. Now, they've just recently opened stores in England, Italy. So as part of that journey, we wouldn't be who we are or where we are today if it wasn't for that partnership that started back then. And they've grown massively, here in Australia externally. And so that's how we've got to where it is. We have 1 factory in Sydney, and that's where they started, 1 factory here. Then they expanded into Queensland. So we used to transport the beds up there and had a carrier as a warehouse. And then that gradually we started making bases up there because of the freight to get her up there, which then became a tape edge machine to fix mattresses for customer services. And then Harvey Norman expanded into Victoria, the southern state. And so as they've expanded around the country, we've been, I wouldn't say forced, but we've been given the opportunity to grow along with them. And so a lot of those factories are acquisitions from other family-owned businesses where they didn't have any children with the passion or the aptitude to carry on the business. And so it wasn't a big grand plan that we're going to go out there and take over the world. It was just a hell of a roller coaster, opening in Sydney, and then every month they're opening another store. And these are massive stores. They're like a RC Willie, and they're furniture, electrical, furniture, bedding, computers. Are the first ones to do the computer stores here in Australia. So it's been a great journey, and we still have a great partnership with them.
And so whenever Harvey Norman started expanding outside of Australia, did you expand with them on that journey as well?
We did in New Zealand because we already were exporting beds to New Zealand. And so we scaled that up and they've grown to 42 stores in New Zealand now, which is a population of only 6.7 million people. And in other countries, like when they expanded, ironically, into Ireland, we reached out to our affiliate Kingclaw licensee up there, a company called K-Med, the Wolfson family, and we encouraged them. Initially, they were reluctant to supply to this new one, Harvey Norman. They were under a bit of pressure from their retailers not to supply them, and we eventually encouraged them and convinced them that they should get on board. And they've been a major supplier to Harvey Norman there for a long time. And the same goes in Singapore and Malaysia and all these countries. Is we don't actually supply it, but we'll go through our network of bedding companies that we've created over the years. We'll go to them and say, "Can you supply beds to Harvey Norman?" They pay very well. They pay 14 days, and they just continue to keep on growing.
That's incredible. As you look back on your time running the company and growing the company, what are some of your favorite stories? Maybe they were tough times, or maybe they were inflection points in the business that were celebrated. What are some of your favorite stories or some of those standout moments?
Look, our business has certainly been through some ups and downs, like many family businesses over the years. We had a near-death experience in the post-Olympic, at the Sydney Olympics, which created a huge boom here in Australia. They also had the introduction of what they call a GST, a goods and services tax. And even though we had a wholesale tax of 12% on there at the time, everybody thought that things were going to get more expensive. So they went out and bought up. And so created this huge boom. But as you and I know, after every big boom, there's usually a corresponding trough afterwards. And all the hotels had upgraded their beds prior to the Olympics so they could ask maximum dollar, RevPAR, etc. So that was I wouldn't say an enjoyable experience, but our biggest customer, Harvey Norman, helped. It was unusual that actually the retailer helped out the manufacturer because they valued our business and our supply. Also, when we expanded into China, that was a real highlight for us. We've had quite a few approaches over the years from Chinese companies wanting to buy the product. As you know, quite often that's usually for what we call R&D. It means rip off and duplicate. And so we eventually found some retail partners, 3 girls, 3 women that were, ironically, they actually met through Amway. And they were very good, and still are very good entrepreneurs. That when they build a new tower, they would buy the penthouse suite and fit it out. And they had shops which did flooring and kitchens and furniture. But the one thing they kept on having to buy was a bed. So they ended up stumbling on us. And so we started with them back in 2012, had the big grand open in 2013. They've now grown to about 47 Beard stores across China and still growing. I was only about a month ago, I attended the opening of the new flagship store in Shenzhen. And it's absolutely, a magnificent store right next to Haston's, Savoy, some of the leading brands in the world. You can be a big fish in a small pond here in Australia, and it really is a small pond. Even though it's a big country, we've only got 27 million people in our population, our whole country. But when you go to China, you're then competing with all the best marque brands from all over the world. And so it's a way to stretch the capabilities of our team, create a bigger challenge. And as you know, China is also a bit of a showroom for the world. Retailers all over the world go to China to attend, the Shanghai show, the Guangzhou show. And while they're there, they'll go out there and visit retail stores. And then they quite often stumble on our stores and go, wow, that's fantastic. Can we partner with you in our country? So we've recently licensed our brand into Spuma in Brazil. You mentioned Paul Longman before, who used to be our CEO. We've just partnered with Paul at a licensing deal for Spain, Portugal, and the United Kingdom, which is quite amazing. And we're in advanced discussions of licensing the Beard brand into quite a few other countries, especially South America, actually. Yeah, so there seems to be a lot of growth there.
Wow, what an incredible just journey, even that piece right there. Now, for people that don't know, what is your footprint? What is your presence like in the United States?
as you know, we've been a King Cole licensee for many, many years. Through that, we became friends with the Diamondstein family. And also, when I was on the board of ISPA, it used to be what they call the ex-chairman's club. We used to go skiing either before or after the ISPA show or, the Vegas show. And so through that, we became friends with Richard Diamondstein. And they told us that they were considering dropping out of King Cole because they only had a limited territory. Even though they had a standard high point, the retailers come in and go, geez, I like your beds. Yeah, and they'd have to say, I'm sorry, we can't supply to you. It's outside our territory. And so I remember Richard looked at us because we had multiple brands back in those days. Back in those days, one stage we used to be therapeutic, one stage we were Restonic, and so we used to be partnered with Sleep Number, and that's how we largely grew our business. We also had Earl Cluft, we had Eclipse, still have, and so we were able to give different brands to different retailers, and they were able to enjoy superior margin with separate exclusive features. And so that's where Richard said, we're thinking about leaving King Cole. Would we be able to offer some of your brands to our customers? And of which we said, yep. And we gave them examples of those. And you possibly would be familiar with EJ from Haynes and the Dump. And they had to present to him, the alternative brands to replace King Cole, etc. And ironically, the brand that EJ liked was actually Beard. And ironically, it wasn't one of our brands at the time. It was the name of our business. But we had all these different licensed brands. And so we then entered into a license agreement with Paramount. And I think that's now about 15 years and still going. And they've got some other factories across America that sub-license and manufacture Beard for them to provide national supply in America. So, yeah.
So that's the U.S. footprint. And I'm trying to think. So you first started out going to China. What you were saying about China was you have a licensee there that has the Beard branded freestanding stores, and they've expanded to 47 locations in China.
Yeah, but it's actually not licensed. We actually manufacture all the products here in Australia and ship them to China. But they're very, very high end. We started about 10,000 US, and our top of the range for a king size mattress only is about 75,000 US. And so it's fully manufactured here in Australia. And that's a big part of the attraction for the Chinese. Once they achieve a certain degree of success in affluence, ironically, the last thing they want to do is buy a Chinese-made product. They want to impress their friends by the time they bought this imported bed from Australia. It's all handmade, it's all natural, and it's been made by a business that's been going for, over 120 years, which they give a lot of respect to longevity and things like that. So, so it's been quite a journey with them. We have a different partner in Hong Kong, a couple of young guys, new to the industry, but it's more, they just don't know what can't be done. And they've grown to 29 stores in Hong Kong, which is not a big area. So they've become quite strong there with our Beard brand and also another brand called Emma's. So they have different stores. Sometimes in the same complex, they could have 2 or 3 stores. So our model is not just licensing, it can also be supply depending on the country. Depends on the entry tariffs, etc. as well. We have a sub-license in Fiji because there's very high tariffs, even though the hotel partners that we have there, Accor, Intercontinental, Marriott, etc., they would like to buy our beds, but the duty makes it so expensive. So we partner with, another bedding company we've been affiliates with for many, many years. And so they make the Beard and the King Cole brand under sub-license for those hotels.
Allyn, what is in a $75,000 Beard mattress?
Well, it's a calico encased pocket spring with multiple layers of micro pockets from our partners Harrison Spinks in the UK, who you'd be very familiar with. They're the oldest bedding company in the UK. We're the oldest bedding company here in Australia. We've had a multi-generational friendship with them for a long, long time. And as you know, they're very innovative. And so that bed would have close to about 20,000 springs in it alone. And then it has layers of the best cashmere, the best silk, the best alpaca, the best Elliott Dale wool, and then it's hand tufted, but also side stitched. So it could have 5 rows of side stitching. So they've got to stitch it, layer by layer. It can take you days just to make one bed. So that's what, and as when you hand make a mattress like that, it will virtually last forever. It's it weighs a ton. You wouldn't have to deliver it, I can tell you.
Is it adjustable friendly?
It is too, as well. Yeah,
Oh, it
of
is.
course. We're big on selling adjustable, so all our range is adjustable friendly. Yeah.
Who are some of the notable people that you can talk about that sleep on an Beard mattress? I noticed in some of the stuff that I was taking a look at ahead of time, you had many famous athletes and TV personalities. There was a guy that was a Red Bull pilot that said he pulls about 14 G's in the air, and thankfully he gets into 0 G on his Beard. Who are some of those people that are your standout stars that sleep on an Beard?
Yeah. Well, Matt is, he is the current world champion of Red Bull racing. Here in Australia, he is the true Top Gun. He's flown F-35s, he's flown F-18s, and you'll find that interesting that, in that video you saw him flying that Red Bull plane. I've actually flown with him with that. You can actually buy to do an experience with Matt Hall. One of our customers who owns about 540 Wink stores is coming up to his 50th birthday, and I'm going, geez, what do I buy Andrew for his birthday? And each year, Matt comes along to a charity golf event that we've been sponsoring for over 2 decades called the Jack Newton Celebrity Classic. You would remember the Bob Hope Celebrity Classic years ago. It's the same type of format as that. Jack Newton was one of our very talented golfers that had an unfortunate accident that walked into the propeller of a plane between events and lost his right arm. And so he does this Jack Newton Celebrity Classic, and also has a Jack Newton Junior Golf Foundation, which we also support. So Matt Hall, the welcome barbecue on the first night of this charity event, Matt goes up there, does this demonstration at the golf course and does all these stunts. He actually sometimes flies down the fairways at like 5 foot off the ground, and he's enormously talented. So I bought it for our customer, and came over his birthday. So guess what? I thought that we're both doing the ride with Matt Hall, and he's going, oh. And I've gone, gee, that wasn't the response I was looking for. And I didn't know he gets motion sickness. And in this, when you do that Red Bull experience, you actually do the simulated Red Bull course and you do all these stunts. And so, even in that, we're hitting 8 Gs, which is quite taxing on your body. So Matt sleeps on one of our beds, and as I said, he's from doing all those Gs, and I said in full competition, he can hit 14 Gs, 14 times your body weight. I'm sure that a lot of people watching this show would also know Chris Hemsworth, the famous actor, Thor. One of our account executives was in one of the Harvey Norman stores when he walked in to fit out his new home at Lennox Heads, and so his whole house is fitted out with King Cole Platinum Luxuries. And also in that video that you would have seen, our former Prime Minister, John Howard. And most Australians would regard him as the best Prime Minister we've ever had. So John sleeps on our products and a great supporter of our brand. He was the Prime Minister when they outlawed guns in Australia. If you remember we had the terrible mass shootings with Martin Bryant in Tasmania, we shot 17 people. And John made the decision to do the buyback of all guns and rifles, ban automatic guns, etc., handguns. Sure, there's still an underworld, guns still do exist, but the average person finds it very, very hard, what you have to go through. You can be a member of a gun club and still go to a rifle range, but you got to store them under lock and key, you've got to go through psychological tests, etc. So we haven't had a mass shooting since then. So no doubt there's a lot of Australians walking around this country that wouldn't have been here had he not done what he did. So, controversial topic, but living in Australia, looking at America, it worries you at times. You go to these, areas like Vegas where there's lots of people, and it's so easy to get a gun in your country. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's something that even educators, my wife and she was a high school teacher for a dozen years, and she doesn't want to go back in the classroom. That's a contributing factor. Now, of course, she works for the FAM, and she brings her educational expertise to organizing events and bringing people together and helping them learn about the industry and connect around the industry. But that was a real factor for us, with not wanting to go back in the classroom, which is turned into a target pit for people that want to do some harm to others, which is horrific.
Yeah, well, here in Australia, we only get the news about sizable shootings. And, and it's not just America. There are some nutters out there, just that one in Germany the other day where the guy drove through the Christmas gathering. It's a crazy world. But I think, having guns freely available gives them a much easier opportunity. And sure, they can have access to knives, but it's pretty hard to kill 17 people with a knife. I'm pretty sure they'd stop you well before then. And but anyway, so John was the Prime Minister, a great supporter of ours. He actually came to the first grand opening of our store in Shanghai for a couple of days, and his profile, even though he's no longer the Prime Minister, is still possibly as great as what it was when he was the Prime Minister. And as I said, we in the video for 125th, we reached out to a lot of the celebrities and customers, etc., who gave us a vox pop testimonial about how well they sleep on their Beard bed. Because a lot of the guys in our factories don't know who we supply beds to, who they make the beds for. So it was largely designed for them, so we could go around, show them these videos, and having people like John Howard, and then you've got famous footballers, AFL, rugby league, and it depends on what sport they support. They can actually have a connection with that person. Go, oh wow, I didn't know. Steve Waugh, he was not just the captain of the Australian cricket team and very successful at that. He was also Australian of the Year, which is a very very prestigious award to get in Australia. We're going to give it to one person each year, and so Steve's been Australian of the Year, been a great supporter of ours, sleeps on all our beds all the time. So there's quite a few. So we just gave them a small little compilation of some of those people, gives them something to talk about, and have a bit of an understanding of what they do and why it's important to make the beds, give it that quality finish, because you never know, it could be John Howard that's going to sleep on that bed.
And you have 450 team members now that are part of Beard?
Yeah, it hovers. We were as high as about 480, but with the recent recession or the cost of living crisis, we wound that back to a little bit over 400. We're back up again now. It's about 450. Right there. But it varies as to obviously the economic market out there. But it's okay. It's gradually coming back. I'm confident 2025 will be a much better year.
I'm starting to feel the same thing. I've heard it from a lot of people too. I feel like there's some stabilization coming. We might see some interest rate cuts. And so we're hopeful that this year is when you can turn on the fire hose of sales. Although I will say there are pockets of people out there that have been very involved in their communities for years, and that is paying off. That connection to the community, the connection to people that they're selling to. I've seen people up 40%, and then other parts of the country where everything's eroded. What is sort of the economic climate right now in Australia? How are sales for Beard? What's the retail environment like?
Yeah, look, interest rates in Australia haven't started coming back down yet. New Zealand, they have. New Zealand's been in official recession for quite some time, and I would maintain that we've been in a recession for about the last 18 months. However, that's been offset because normally pre-COVID, Australia used to allow in about 160,000 people, new immigrants into the country, which is nothing by your standards, but for Australia, that's big. Post-COVID, they opened the door and brought in 600,000. That stimulates the economy. Also, we have quite a resources boom happening in Australia because Australia has great resources in iron ore, lithium, graphite, rare earths, gold, you name it, uranium. We've got the whole lot. So that's sort of offset it. But in the retail world with our customers, and as you know, the beds we sell are a very discretionary purchase. If you've had your bed for 8-9 years and you've got any uncertainty about your job or your mortgage repayments or everything, you just postpone buying a new bed until your confidence comes back. And so also our biggest competitor for discretionary dollars is the travel and cruise market. So as you know, with COVID, we went into COVID, they closed our borders, and in certain states in Australia, they closed their borders in that state. Then you come out of that, the governments have pumped a lot of money in to try and keep people employed, but they couldn't spend it on travel, so they accumulated all these dollars. So they did home renovations or refurbished their home, new lounge, big screen TV, and quite often new beds. and they possibly spent more than what they would have pre-COVID. And then, as you know, then you went through the raw material cost increase spiral. Remember timber going up. You couldn't get enough timber because all the houses are being built and all the renovations. And then all your materials went up. And then it fell into a hole after that. And there was the cost of living crisis. Insurance went up. Petrol went up. Everything went up, And then also the cruises started operating again, travel. And I think there was a lot of pent-up demand because people couldn't travel for a couple of years. All your friends, you talk to them, they're going, oh, we're going to the Mediterranean, we're going to Fiji, we're going to Bali. And, that takes out dollars that we compete for. So it's been tough in the mattress game for about the last 18 months here in Australia. Also, you guys have got a little bit to blame there for that as well, is that when you created your anti-dumping petition back in 2015 and the Chinese then couldn't compete with the introduced tariffs on there, guess what? Guess which markets got the most similar products, brands, styling, etc.? Australia. So we had an inordinate amount of competition coming from China, both in e-commerce retailers and selling to bricks and mortar. So that also had a bit of a compounding effect. So it has been quite tough here, but it is gradually getting better. We've just finished Black Friday with possibly the strongest orders we've ever experienced. And as you know, that's making a real change in retail trading patterns. In Australia, we have our biggest peak of the market used to be the Boxing Day sales, the day after Christmas, where we condition people to wait for the department stores to open their doors on Boxing Day, day after Christmas, and people rush in there to grab all the specials. Well, these days, I think a lot of people now grab all the specials at Black Friday and do a lot of their Christmas shopping to save money. So it's just changing all the time. But so 2025, we will have a federal election here in Australia in April. Here in Australia, that puts a dampener on the market in the lead up to the elections. As you know, usually each political party creates a lot of negativity about, if you don't vote for us, the economy is going to go, down the sink or whatever. So a lot of people hold off till they see what the outcome of the election is. So, but I think once we get through that, hopefully we'll be back to a bit more normal trading.
Well, speaking of the conditions of the market and times of change, one of the things that's happening within Beard, you said, is the fifth generation is actually coming on board. What has that been like? The economy is always going to move and is always going to change, but you've stabilized this now. It's going to be a fifth generation business. What is it like doing business with your family, with family members, and bringing on that next generation? Do they have new ideas that are out there and wild? Do they have different perspectives you're trying to recognize and incorporate in the business? How would you describe it?
Oh, look, it is very challenging. As you know, business, I always tell people, business itself is challenging. When you bring family dynamics into it, it makes it even more challenging. However, the reverse side of the coin is it brings a lot of benefits. I think within your family members, you'll dig a bit deeper when you need to. You can rely on family members, you can trust them, etc. And that's very, very important in business. And also when you're bringing in new generations, they do bring in new perspectives. They challenge, and as they should, the previous norms of the way we've always done things. They come in and say, well, why? We need to think differently, and which we do. And so we're very fortunate at Beard. As Gary, myself, and two sisters, we're the fourth generation. The business has grown into quite a medium-sized enterprise, and it's great that we've actually got members of the fifth generation that don't just have an appetite for it. They've got the aptitude, they've got the passion, which I think is very, very important to take the business to the next level. Gary's older son, Matt, is being groomed to eventually be my successor. I'm now starting to bring him to trade shows to meet, suppliers at like ISPA Expos, etc., or to the Vegas, etc. He'll be there in Vegas with us. You'll get to meet him. And he's quite a inspiring young guy, and, we're very fortunate. And we've seen a lot of other family businesses where they're not so fortunate, and they pass the business on to a next generation that just don't have the aptitude, do not have the passion, and eventually the business fails. Or you start losing good people because, if you've got good, high caliber people, they're saying, look, one day I'm going to work for that, sorry, but dickhead, if that's the case, I'm looking for another job. And so we're very clear. We have very clear rules about siblings coming into the business. They've got to sit for the appointment, interview just like everybody else. And just because their surname may start with the letter B doesn't give them any better chance. They've got to have the actual tertiary skills that will be expected for that role. And they've also, case of Matt, he did an apprenticeship right from the factory floor right through the whole business. So he can operate all the machines, as can Gary and myself. He then ran our factory in Hobart in Tasmania. That's the little island just south of Australia, and that has about 500,000 people there. There's only 2 bedding factories on that whole island, but with a small staff, you need to be very multi-skilled. You need to, if people don't turn up, you need to be able to sometimes fit in there and and pick up the weight, which Matt did. He then went from there to then managing our biggest facility in Sydney, of a couple hundred staff, and so he's been learning the ropes. And in recent times, he's now he took on key account manager for Domain, and now he's the key account manager for our biggest customer, Harvey Norman, who really like dealing with a family business and the family values.
Wow, Matt's one story of how many that are going to be involved in the 5th generation.
Yeah, my brother has 4 children. He's got Matt, and Sally is involved in our training and marketing team. The youngest daughter, Rachel, is our sleep wellness ambassador. And so she does a lot of these type of podcasts with media, etc., interviews, etc. And that's a big focus of our business, is talking about sleep wellness, because at the end of the day, that's what we're really selling, is a good night's sleep. And then his other son, Anthony, is actually a very talented musician. He's currently based in Berlin. His band will go and perform in Spain, all around Australia and stuff. They'll be like a headline act with about 60,000 people in the audience. The band's called Caravan of Sun. So if any of your people are looking for a really fun, great band, Matt, and that's his passion. He's got no interest in the business, just all about music. My son, I only have one son, but he has his own business. He started just before COVID, more working in the marine industry. And then my 2 sisters, one sister doesn't have any children. The other sister has 2. Her daughter is a non-executive board member on the Beard board. She was trained by IBM. She then worked with Singtel Optus Telecommunications, also worked at SAI Global. So she brings a lot of corporate and tech to our board, which is valuable as things are changing and emerging. It's good that you've got talent on there that understands those better than the previous generation did. So we're very lucky in that regard.
What a great story. And to have, like you said, the aptitude, the attitude, the desire to actually want to join the business, that's really a testament to the culture that the company has. Because otherwise, like you said, I mean, if your last name starts with a B, you probably have the ability to go other places and do other things as well. So the fact that you've created that magnet is really impressive. I'm always curious, Allyn, especially with your history and this 125-year legacy with Beard. If you, knowing what you know today, but if you had to restart and be in this sleep and mattress industry in any capacity, but you had to restart today, what would you do? Where are the opportunities?
Yeah, I guess we all ask ourselves those questions, always 2020 vision, looking backwards type of thing. I'd have to say, I think there's been more success in retail than what there has been in manufacturing. Manufacturing here in Australia is tough, very competitive. Labour costs in Australia are very, very high. You need to understand that, all our workers in Australia, they get paid 4 weeks annual holidays from the moment they start. So after the first quarter, they're already entitled for a week's paid holiday, of which they also get a 17.5% loading on top of to compensate for the overtime they miss out on. In addition, they get 11 paid public holidays, 1 week sick paid leave, also superannuation, which is your equivalent of 401k. Each manufacturer has to contribute 12% to superannuation, which makes this, very, it's a very high standard of living here in Australia. but very high cost of manufacturing. And as you know, we're now in a global world. We've got to compete against China. We have zero protection of tariffs, never have had any of mattresses coming in from China, etc., or other countries for that matter. But we're fortunate. We've built up a business over these years, built up a reputation, built up a fantastic team of people. So we keep on doing what we do, what we love, and we generally have very, very good, strong relationships with our customers. A lot of them are personal friends. Some of these ones, we go on holidays away together. To me, I think that's a bit of an ideal situation when you've got customers that you enjoy doing business with. You've got a great team of people which have been with us. Our tenure is like on average about 16 years. So we have a lot of long-standing employees who've been through the ups and downs. So we're fortunate. We enjoy what we do. We don't know much else. But the business just keeps on growing, and as you bring more people, more talent, opportunities just seem to fall on your doorstep.
Well, something's rigged in your favor because 125 years of history and providing people with great sleep and great products. That's an amazing story. And thank you for sharing it. Thank you for being on the show today. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share? What did we miss?
Oh, gee, don't get me started.
I'm going to get you wound up.
Yeah. It's always interesting living in Australia, traveling to America a couple of times a year to trade shows, visit stores, etc. You look at the transformation of what e-commerce has created to the bedding market, and you look at even the anti-dumping petitions, all these type of things. I think in America, I think they undervalue the benefit of having an organisation like ISPA. With what you're faced with mattress recycling, if you didn't have ISPA, and especially under the leadership of Ryan, who's a great president, etc. I think that's saying as a takeout, people should appreciate how important it is to not just have an industry association, but to have one that's very well led, well capitalised, and because that could have been what they were proposing for recycle standards and quantities for California would have been devastating to lots and lots of businesses. But fortunately, they were able to come up with a better, more manageable, more economical model. We're fortunate. I've been coming to the expos for years and years, and as I said, it's an industry of people, of great people, of friends and connections, and that's what's I think a bit different about this market. And also, I guess the other thing is just what we do. A lot of people, we're very lucky that we work in a category that what we manufacture and sell can have a considerable benefit to people's lives. There's lots of other products that you could sell, and it's just the price is cheaper or delivery's quicker or whatever. It's a name brand. Beds, there's so many different factors of what you have to nail. It's not just price competitive. It's consistent quality. Prompt delivery, reliable delivery, good representation from your sales team, your marketing, your website, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, we are selling a product that can really impact people's lives positively. And when you think about it, there's not many industries or jobs that you could do that you can actually have such a profound effect on people. I myself, I've got a triple fusion in my back from my younger football days. And as I'm getting older, obviously it becomes more challenging, etc. And we get people that write to us that they buy one of the beds. Quite often they buy the wrong one, and it makes their condition worse. A lot of companies would throw that in the bin and say, well, bad luck, you chose it. In our situation, we reach out to them and try and modify the bed to give them the optimum support for their particular support and comfort that they need for their condition. And as I said, we've had some transformational benefits out of that, and hopefully winning lifelong customers because we went the extra distance to help them out. Because if you're sleeping on the wrong bed and if you've got an inherent back problem, it can make things a lot worse and impact your not just how you perform at work or whether or not you enjoy sport, etc. So I think people need to stop and take stock that this is a good industry, great people, but it's a product that really can have a positive, beneficial impact on people's lives. So I think that's pretty good.
Well, I love that. That's a highlight for me as well. It's one of the things that got me attached to this industry, the fact that it was in the wellness space, and I didn't even realize it in the beginning, but it's the object on which you spend more of your life than any other object. It's that third of your life is going to make the other 2/3 fantastic if you get it right. And not to mention everything you just described with aches and pains, but there's so much purpose behind the products that we sell. And also, I agree with what you said about ISPA. It's a fantastic organization, and they do so much good work for this industry and help us to advance that purpose and that mission behind what we do. Allyn, thank you so much for being here on the FAM podcast. You have an incredible story. It sounds like you have an incredible family, and the business now is entering 125 more years. Cheers to that.
Yep. Cheers to that. We certainly hope so. Thank you for the invitation. It's been great chatting to you.
Well, Allyn, I'll look forward to seeing you in Vegas. And if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to go back and listen to the other podcasts with Amy Griffiths. Listen to the podcast with Paul Longman. You can find all that up on thefam.com, thefam.com. Click on the little podcast icon. And take care. We'll see you back here next Monday and every Monday.